From the art of Africa to your screen. This is Raw Tales Africa, where every story cuts deep. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications because it will mean the whole world to me. Now, let's get right into the story. The conference room was packed with Lagos' most influential business leaders, their expensive suits and designer watches gleaming under the crystal chandelier. At the head of the mahogany table sat Adaize Okoli, CEO of Pinnacle Holdings, her voice commanding as she addressed the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I have called this emergency board meeting because something has come to my attention that cannot be ignored, she said, her voice scanning the faces before her. It concerns how employees in this building treat those they consider beneath them. The room fell silent. Kingsley Thompson, the arrogant head of marketing, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His expensive cologne couldn't mark the sudden smell of fear. There is a woman who works in this building, Adaize continued, her voice growing colder. She arrives at 5 a.m. every day, works tirelessly to keep our offices clean, and has been met with nothing but contempt and cruelty from certain individuals. Kingsley's throat was dry. Behind Adaize, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows. Mama Chinwe, the cleaning lady he had humiliated just as before, now dressed in an elegant business suit. That woman, Adaize said, standing slowly, is my mother. The room erupted in gasps. Kingsley felt the world tilt beneath him. His hands trembled as the full weight of his actions crashed down on him like a tidal wave. But this story started 3 months earlier. The early morning streets of Lagos were still quiet when Chinwe Okoli stepped off the Danfo bus at Tafawa Balewa Square. At 58 years old, she moved with the steady purpose of a woman who had worked hard all her life. Her simple Ankara wrapper and head tie were clean but worn, her hands calloused from decades of labor. She walked through the gleaming entrance of Pinnacle Towers, nodding respectfully to the security guard who barely acknowledged her presence. This was her routine. Arrive before dawn, clean the offices of one of Lagos' most prestigious business districts, and disappear before the executive arrived in their air-conditioned cars. Chinwe had been doing this job for 3 months now, and she had reasons beyond the paycheck, reasons that would shock everyone who looked down on her. Mama Chinwe called out Francis, the young security guard who had grown fond of her. You are early again today. She smiled warmly. Hard work never killed anyone, my son. How is your wife's pregnancy? Francis' face lit up. She's doing well, ma. Thank you for asking. The herbal tea you brought last week really helped with her morning sickness. This was Chinwe, a woman who remembered everyone's troubles, who brought remedies from her village knowledge, who treated the security guards and junior staff with the same respect she would show a governor. But to the executives who swept past her in their designer shoes, she was invisible. On the 15th floor, Kingsley Thompson was already at his desk by 8 a.m. Not because he was hardworking, but because he needed to make calls to his father's business contacts in London before the time difference makes it impossible. At 32, Kingsley had never worked a day outside of air-conditioned offices. His Oxford education and family connections had paved every road for him. He was tall, light-skinned, and carried himself with the arrogance of someone who had never been told no. His suits were tailored in Zavil Rao. His watch was a Patek Philippe, and his contempt for common people was legendary among the staff. Sarah, he barked at his secretary, a young woman from Kano who was putting herself through night school. Why is my coffee not ready? Do I pay you to sit there and paint your nails? Sarah looked up, confused. Sir, I just arrived. I was about to. I don't want to hear excuses. Get me my coffee and make sure it is perfect this time, not like the garbage you served yesterday. Kingsley had never made his own coffee in his life. He had never cleaned anything, never struggled for money, never been rejected for a job because of his background. He was the son of a wealthy businessman who had bought his way into Nigerian society, and he believed this made him superior to everyone around him. As Chinwe began her cleaning on the executive floor, she moved quietly, efficiently. She had developed a system over the months: dust the offices early, mop the hallways during lunch breaks, and clean the conference rooms after meetings. She listened more than she spoke, observed more than she interfered. What the executives didn't know was that Chinwe heard everything. She knew about the bribes, the shortcuts, the way certain employees treated their subordinates. She knew because people talked around cleaning ladies as if they were furniture, and she was taking notes, mental notes that would matter very soon. The first confrontation happened on a Tuesday morning. Chinwe was cleaning Kingsley's office, carefully dusting his awards and certificates that hung on the wall like trophies of privilege. She had learned to be invisible, to clean around people as if she was just another piece of equipment. Kingsley burst into his office, phone pressed to his ear, speaking loudly in what he thought was impressive English mixed with unnecessary big words. Yes, yes, I understand the parameters of the negotiation, he was saying. We need to strategically implement a more aggressive paradigm shift in our market penetration. Chinwe continued dusting, but Kingsley suddenly noticed her presence and his face twisted with irritation. Excuse me, he snapped, covering his phone. Can't you see I am on an important call? Get out of here. Chinwe looked up respectfully. I am sorry, sir. I will come back later. No, you will clean it properly now, but quietly, and don't touch anything expensive. Your hands are probably dirty. The insult stung, but Chinwe said nothing. She continued her work in silence while Kingsley resumed his call, speaking even louder to show his importance. But as she cleaned, Chinwe listened. The call wasn't about business strategy. It was Kingsley begging his father to bail out another failed project. His impressive vocabulary was a mask for his incompetence. 20 minutes later, as Chinwe finished and moved toward the door, Kingsley called out again. Wait! He pointed to a small smudge on his glass desk. You miss a spot. What kind of cleaning is this? Do you people not know how to do your jobs properly? Chinwe returned and cleaned the spot without complaint. But something in her eyes shifted. Kingsley was too self-absorbed to notice. But if he had looked closer, he would have seen not submission but calculation. That afternoon, news spread through the office that the company's biggest client, Okoli Industries, was coming for a major inspection. The CEO, Adaize Okoli, was known to be tough, brilliant, and unforgiving of incompetence. Kingsley primed with excitement. This was his chance to impress someone truly important, someone who could elevate his career to the next level. Sarah, he shouted across the office, make sure my office is spotless for tomorrow, and tell that cleaning woman to do it properly this time. I can't have an embarrassment when Adaize Okoli arrives. He had no idea that Adaize Okoli had been watching for months through her mother's eyes. The next morning, Chinwe arrived earlier than usual. She cleaned Kingsley's office with extra care, polishing every surface until it gleamed. She was arranging his papers when she noticed something: a contract with forged signatures, evidence of the corruption she had been observing. She didn't take it. She didn't need to. She simply noted where it was and continued her work. At 10 a.m. sharp, Adaise Okoli walked into Pinnacle Towers. She was everything Kingsley had heard: tall, elegant, sharp-eyed, and commanding. At 35, she had built her empire through intelligence, hard work, and an ability to see through facades. Kingsley had positioned himself in the lobby, his best suit pressed to perfection, his smile rehearsed. "Miss Okoli," he gushed, extending his hand. "Kingsley Thompson, head of marketing. What an absolute honor to meet you." Adaise shook his hand briefly, her eyes already assessing him. "Mr. Thompson, I've heard about your work." Kingsley's chest swelled with pride. He had no idea that what she had heard came from her mother's detailed reports about his character. As they walked through the office, Kingsley put on a performance. He spoke loudly about quarterly projections, threw around business terminology, and made sure everyone saw him walking beside the famous CEO. They passed Chinwe in the hallway. She was mopping the floor, head down, invisible as always. Kingsley didn't even slow down, but as they walked past, he kicked slightly, sending dirty water from the mop bucket splashing onto Chinwe's shoes. "Watch where you are going," he muttered, not even looking at her. Adaise stopped dead. Her eyes met her mother's for just a moment, a flash of recognition that no one else caught. "Are you all right?" Adaise asked Chinwe gently. Chinwe nodded, eyes downcast. "Yes, ma, I am fine." Kingsley was already several steps ahead, oblivious to the exchange. "Miss Okoli, shall we continue to the conference room?" But Adaise was still looking at her mother, and in that look was a promise. Not yet, but soon. The meeting continued, but Adaise was no longer focused on business projections. She was focused on Kingsley Thompson, watching how he treated the secretary who brought coffee, how he interrupted junior staff members, how he name dropped connections he didn't actually have. By the end of the day, she had made her decision, but she needed more evidence, more witnesses, more rope for Kingsley to hang himself with. The trap was being set, and Kingsley Thompson was walking straight into it. Over the following weeks, Kingsley's behavior toward Chinwe grew progressively worse. Success, or what he perceived as success from his meeting with Adaise Okoli, had inflated his ego to dangerous portions. It was a Thursday morning when Kingsley, rushing to another important meeting, accidentally bumped into Chinwe as she was carrying a tray of cleaning supplies. The impact sent her bottles of floor cleaner and glass polish crashing to the ground. Instead of apologizing, Kingsley exploded. "Are you blind? Look what you have done to my shoes." He pointed to a tiny splash of water on his Italian leather loafers. "These shoes cost more than you make in 6 months." Chinwe immediately knelt to clean up the mess, her hands moving quickly to gather the scattered supplies. "I'm very sorry, sir. Please forgive me." "Sorry doesn't clean my shoes," Kingsley sneered. "You people need to learn to watch where you are going. This is a professional building, not some village markets where you can just stumble around." A small crowd had gathered: secretaries, junior executives, and a few security personnel. They watched in uncomfortable silence as Kingsley continued his tirade. From now on, he announced loudly, I want this woman to clean my office every day. And I mean properly. I will be checking, and if I find even a speck of dust, there will be consequences. Chinwe continued cleaning, her face calm but her jaw slightly tighter. What Kingsley didn't notice was Francis, the security guard, quietly recording the incident on his phone. What he also didn't notice was how the other staff members looked at him, not with respect but with disgust. 2 weeks later, Kingsley was entertaining potential clients from South Africa in the executive lounge. He was trying to impress them with stories of his Oxford education and his family's connections when Chinwe entered to empty the trash bins. Excuse me, she said quietly, beginning her work. Kingsley saw an opportunity to show off. Ah, perfect timing, he said loudly. Gentlemen, this is what I was telling you about. The work ethic here is quite different from what you might expect. The South African executives looked uncomfortable as Kingsley continued. You see, this woman has been cleaning offices for probably decades, but she still can't do it properly. Yesterday, I had to explain to her 3 times how to clean a window. These people, they are willing to work, but they lack the, what's the word? Sophistication for complex tasks. One of the South Africans, a middle aged man named David Kruger, frowned. I'm sorry, but I don't understand. Are you criticizing this lady for doing her job? Kingsley laughed nervously. Oh, no, no. I am just explaining the local dynamics. She is fine for basic tasks, but you have to manage expectations. Chinwe had stopped working. She stood quietly by the trash bin. Her hands clasped in front of her, but her eyes were sharp, alert, taking in every word. David stood up. Excuse me, ma'am, he said to Chinwe. What is your name? Chinwe, sir. Chinwe, how long have you been doing this work? Many years, sir. And do you enjoy it? Chinwe smiled genuinely for the first time. I enjoy honest work, sir. It keeps me close to my family. David nodded respectfully, then turned to Kingsley. Mr. Thompson, I think we have heard enough for today. We'll be in touch. The South Africans left abruptly, leaving Kingsley confused and frustrated. He turned his anger on Chinwe. What did you do? What did you say to them? Nothing, sir. I only answered their questions. Well, your presence made them uncomfortable. From now on, don't clean when I have meetings. Wait until we are finished. Yes, sir. But as Chinwe left the room, she wasn't defeated. She was informed. She now knew that Kingsley was losing business deals because of his attitude, and she knew her daughter would want to know about it. The third major incident happened during the monthly staff meeting. Kingsley had been complaining about operational costs and the need to trim the fat from the company budget. We need to be more efficient, he announced to the gathered employees. Some departments are overstaffed, and frankly, we are paying too much for basic services. After the meeting, he cornered Mr. Adenuga, the facilities manager. This cleaning staff, Kingsley said, they are overpaid for what they do. How much are we paying that old woman who does the executive floor? Mr. Adenuga, an older man who had worked his way up from humble beginnings, shifted uncomfortably. Mama Chinwe, she is one of our best workers, sir. Always on time, never complains, does quality work. I don't care about her attitude. I care about results. And frankly, I think we could get someone younger and more efficient for half the price. Sir, with respect, her salary is already quite modest. She makes barely enough to. I am not interested in sub stories, Kingsley interrupted. Business is business. Either she accepts a pay cut or we find someone else. Unknown to Kingsley, Chinwe was cleaning the conference room next door. The thin walls meant she heard every word. That evening, for the first time since starting the job, Chinwe went home hungry. Not just hot or frustrated, but genuinely hungry. She sat in a small flat in Mushi, looking at a photo of her daughter graduating from business school years earlier. Adaise had worked 3 jobs to pay for her education, had been rejected from dozens of companies because she didn't have connections, had built her empire through sheer determination. And now, this privileged boy, who had never worked a real day in his life, wanted to cut her mother's salary because he considered her worthless. Chinwe picked up her phone and made a call. Adaise, my daughter, we need to talk. The breaking point came on a rainy Friday morning in November. The electricity had gone out in the building and the elevators weren't working. Chinwe, carrying her heavy cleaning supplies, had to walk up 15 flights of stairs to reach the executive floor. She was exhausted by the time she reached Kingsley's floor. Her breathing labored, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool weather. Kingsley was in a foul mood. His latest project had been rejected by the board. His father was threatening to cut his allowance, and he had just been reprimanded by his supervisor for his poor client relations. When Chinwe knocked on his door, he exploded. What now? Can't you see I am busy? Sir, I am here to clean your office. Well, be quick about it and try not to break anything this time. Chinwe entered and began her work, but she was moving slower than usual. The climb up the stairs had taken more out of her than she expected. Kingsley watched her with growing irritation. Can you move faster? I don't have all day. I am sorry, sir. I will try to hurry. But as she reached to dust a high shelf, her legs gave out slightly. She stumbled, catching herself against the desk but knocking over a small plant in the process. The plant fell to the floor, dirt scattering across the expensive carpet. Kingsley shot up from his chair. Are you kidding me? Are you completely useless? I am sorry, sir. I will clean it up immediately. You will clean it up. You have just made it worse. He stepped closer, his voice rising. This is exactly what I am talking about. You people don't belong in professional environments. You are clumsy, you are slow, and you are costing us money. Chinwe knelt to clean up the soil, her hands shaking slightly, not from fear but from suppressed anger. Look at you, Kingsley continued, his voice dripping with contempt, crawling around on the floor like an animal. This is where you belong. This is your level. A small crowd had gathered outside the office. Sarah, the secretary, Mr. Adenuga, several junior staff members who had heard the shouting. Maybe it is time we found someone younger, someone more capable, Kingsley said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Someone who doesn't turn simple tasks into disasters. He walked to his desk and pulled out his phone. I am calling security to escort you out. You are fired. The room fell silent. Even Kingsley seemed surprised by his own words. Chinwe slowly stood up, dirt still on her hands, but her back straight. For the first time in months, she looked Kingsley directly in the eyes. You want to fire me? She asked quietly. That's right. Pack up your things and get out. You are done here. And you think you have the authority to do that? Something in her tone made Kingsley pause. There was no pleading, no begging, no fear, just a quiet confidence that he had never heard from her before. I am the head of marketing, he said, less confidently. I have the authority to make personnel decisions. Chinwe smiled, not a submissive smile, but something else entirely. Do you now? She pulled out her phone and made a call. Adaize, yes, it is time. Come to the office now. Kingsley looked confused. Who are you calling? Security? Something like that, Chinwe replied. Within 10 minutes, the elevator doors opened on the 15th floor. Adaize Okoli stepped out, followed by two men in expensive suits, the company's legal counsel and the head of human resources. Kingsley straightened up, suddenly switching to his professional demeanor. Miss Okoli, what a pleasant surprise. I was just dealing with a small personnel issue. Yes, Adaize said coldly. I heard. You fired someone. Well, yes, the cleaning staff. There was an incident with some property damage, and I made an executive decision. And what exactly gives you the authority to fire cleaning staff? Kingsley blinked. Well, I am the head of marketing. I have personnel authority over marketing staff. Yes, but cleaning staff report to facilities management, which reports directly to the board, which means you just overstepped your authority in a very public way. The crowd that had gathered was now openly staring. Sarah was recording everything on her phone. I was just trying to maintain professional standards, Kingsley stammered. Professional standards, Adaize repeated. Let me tell you about professional standards, Mr. Thompson. She walked over to where Chinwe was standing, still in her cleaning uniform, still dignified despite everything. This woman has worked in this building for 3 months. In that time, she has never been late, never complained, never failed to complete her duties. She has been respectful to everyone, even when others have shown her no respect in return. Kingsley shifted uncomfortably. Yes, well, attitude is important, but competence. Competence? Adaize's voice rose slightly. Let's talk about competence. In the 3 months she has been here, she has observed every meeting, every deal, every interaction on this floor. She has seen contracts with forged signatures, witnessed bribes being discussed, and watched as employees were mistreated based on their background. Kingsley's face went pale. I don't know what you are implying. I am not implying anything. I am stating facts. Facts that have been carefully documented and reported to the appropriate authorities. The blood drained from Kingsley's face. Reported by whom? Adaize walked to stand beside Chinwe, and for the first time, the family resemblance was unmistakable. The same intelligent eyes, the same proud posture, the same quiet strength. Reported by my mother. The silence that followed Adaize's revelation was deafening. Kingsley's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. His eyes darting between Adaize and Chinwe as his brain struggled to process what he had just heard. Your mother, he whispered. My mother, Adaize confirmed. Chinwe Okoli, the woman you just fired, the woman you have been humiliating for 3 months, the woman you said belongs to the floor like an animal. The crowd of onlookers had grown. Word was spreading throughout the building like wildfire. Executive assistants, junior staff, even some senior staffs had gathered to witness what was clearly a moment of reckoning. Kingsley's legs felt weak. He stumbled backward until he hit his desk, his hand reaching out to steady himself. But, but she is just a cleaning lady. She is the mother of the CEO of Okoli Industries, your company's largest client, Adaize said, her voice sharp as a blade. She is also a woman with a master's degree education who spent 30 years as a headmistress before retiring. She is a woman who raised 4 children on her own after my father died, who put all of us through university by working 3 jobs. The revelations kept coming, each one hitting Kingsley like a physical blow. She is also, Adaize continued, the woman who taught me that you can measure a person's true character by how they treat those who can do nothing for them. Chinwe stepped forward and, for the first time, she spoke with her full authority. Mr. Thompson, you wanted to know about professional standards. Let me share some observations I have made during my time here. Her voice was no longer that of a humble cleaning lady. It was the voice of an educated woman, a leader, someone who commanded respect. In 3 months, I have watched you forge signatures on 2 different contracts. I have listened to you lie to clients about your qualifications and your company's capabilities. I have seen you steal credit for projects completed by your subordinates. Kingsley opened his mouth to protest, but Chinwe held up her hand. I have documentation, Mr. Thompson, dates, times, witnesses. You see, when people think you are invisible, they forget that you have eyes and ears. Furthermore, she continued, I have watched you create a hostile work environment for anyone you consider beneath your social class. I have seen you reduce young women to tears, humiliate hardworking men, and create an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. Sarah, his secretary, stepped forward from the crowd. It is true, she said, her voice shaking but determined. He has been bullying staff for months. We were all afraid to report it because he has family connections. Other voices joined in. He took credit for the Dangote projects that I designed. He made racist comments about my tribal background. He threatened to fire me for taking sick leave when my mother was in the hospital. Kingsley looked around widely, seeing his career crumbling before his eyes. This is a conspiracy. You can't all be against me because of one incident with the cleaning staff. One incident. Adaize's voice was dangerously quiet. Mr. Thompson, shall I list the incidents? When you kicked dirty water on my mother in the hallway, when you humiliated her in front of South African clients, when you tried to cut her salary because you considered her worthless, when you made her climb 15 flights of stairs while carrying heavy equipment because you couldn't be bothered to ensure the elevators were working, Chinwe added. When you told me I belonged on the floor like an animal, Kingsley was trapped and he knew it. But his pride, his arrogance, his complete inability to accept responsibility for his actions made him double down. So what if I did? He said, his voice rising in desperation. She is just a cleaning lady. I don't care who her daughter is. I don't care what degrees she has. In this building, she is nothing but hired help, and I treated her accordingly. The crowd gasped. Even his few remaining allies took a step back. You want to fire me because I put someone in their place, Kingsley continued, his voice becoming hysterical. Because I maintain proper hierarchies. Because I expected professional behavior from service staff. No, Mr. Thompson, Adaise said, her voice calm again. We want to fire you because you are a bully, a fraud, and a liability to this company. The cleaning lady issue just helped us realize how deep your problems go. She turned to address the crowd. Let this be a lesson to everyone here. How you treat people when you think no one important is watching. That is who you really are. Mr. Thompson showed us exactly who he is. Kingsley made one last desperate attempt to save himself. You can't do this. My father has connections. He will make sure you regret this. Your father, Adaise said with a slight smile, just lost his biggest contract with our company. Funny how things like that happen when your son represents your family's values so poorly. The reality hit Kingsley like a sledgehammer. Not only was he losing his job, but his actions had consequences for his family's business empire as well. Security will escort you out, Adaise announced. Your personal belongings will be sent to you. Your company credit cards and access keys need to be returned immediately. As security approached, Kingsley looked around the room one more time. Every face stared back at him with disgust, disappointment, or simple satisfaction at seeing justice served. His eyes finally landed on Chinwe, who stood quietly beside her daughter, dignified in her cleaning uniform. I didn't know, he whispered. That's the point, Chinwe replied. You didn't know because you never bothered to see me as a human being worthy of respect. And with that, Kingsley Thompson was escorted out of Pinnacle Towers, his careers in ruins, his reputation destroyed, his privileged life forever changed by his own cruelty. After Kingsley was escorted out, the crowd began to disperse, but the energy in the building had completely shifted. Word of what happened spread through all 15 floors within the hour. The arrogant executive who had terrorized staff for months had been brought down by the woman he considered beneath notice. Adaise called for an immediate all-staff meeting in the main conference room. As employees filed in, there was a buzz of excitement mixed with apprehension. Change was coming and everyone could feel it. Chinwe had gone to the ladies' room to clean up and change. When she emerged, she was no longer wearing her cleaning uniform. Instead, she wore a simple but elegant navy blue dress and pearls, the clothes she had been keeping in her locker for this moment. The transformation was remarkable. Gone was the hunched posture of someone trying to stay invisible. In his place stood a woman of obvious intelligence and dignity, someone who commanded respect simply by entering a room. Ladies and gentlemen, Adaise began as the room fell silent. I want to formally introduce someone who has been working among you for 3 months, someone who has been observing, learning, and helping us understand the true culture of this workplace. She gestured to Chinwe, who stepped forward with confidence. This is Chinwe Okoli, my mother, and as of today, our new director of workplace culture and employee relations. The room erupted in murmurs of surprise and recognition. Many had never really looked at Chinwe before, but now they could see the family resemblance clearly. Some of you may be wondering why we conducted these unconventional assessments. Adaise continued. The answer is simple. We had reports of workplace harassment and discrimination, but we needed to understand the scope of the problem. Chinwe stepped to the microphone. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had spent decades managing classrooms full of teenagers, someone who knew how to command attention and respect. My children, she began, using the warm term that immediately connected her to the younger staff members. What I discovered in 3 months of working here was both troubling and inspiring. She paused, looking around the room at faces that now looked back with curiosity rather than dismissal. I found that some individuals in positions of power were creating environments of fear and intimidation. I found evidence of discrimination based on social class, tribal background, and economic status. I found that talented young people were being held back because they don't have the right connections. Nods and murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. But I also found something beautiful. Chinwe continued, her voice warming. I found young people like Sarah, who worked 2 jobs to put herself through night school but still treats everyone with kindness. I found security guards like Francis, who checks on elderly staff members and remembers personal details about everyone's families. She looked directly at the staff members she mentioned, and they beamed with pride at being recognized. I found facility managers like Mr. Denuga who defend their workers even when it might put their own positions at risk. I found a workplace full of good people who were being oppressed by a few bad actors. The applause that followed was spontaneous and heartfelt. From today forward, Adaise announced, we will be implementing new policies to ensure that every employee, regardless of their position or background, is treated with respect and dignity. There will be zero tolerance for harassment, discrimination, or abuse of power. She outlined the new procedures: anonymous reporting systems, regular culture assessments, mandatory sensitivity training for all managers, and most importantly, advancement opportunities based on merits rather than connections. We will also be establishing a scholarship program, Chinwe added, for employees who want to continue their education, because I believe that everyone deserves the chance to grow and advance, regardless of where they started. The room erupted in applause. Sarah was openly crying, as were several other young staff members who had been struggling to advance their careers. As the official meeting ended and employees began to file out, many stopped to personally thank Chinwe and apologize for not seeing her true worth earlier. The interactions were genuine and emotional, people recognizing their own prejudices and committing to do better. But not everyone was celebrating. Victoria Nwosu, the head of human resources, remained seated as others left. She had been Kingsley's ally, someone who had consistently ignored complaints about his behavior and had actively blocked advancement opportunities for employees from humble backgrounds. Miss Okoli, she said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger, I need to speak with you about this charade you've been playing. Adaise and Chinwe exchanged glances. They had been expecting this. What exactly is your concern, Victoria? Adaise asked. Victoria stood, her expensive handbag clutched tightly in her manicured hands. My concern is that you've been conducting what amounts to corporate espionage. You've been deceiving employees, gathering information under false pretenses, and now you are using that information to destroy careers. Destroy careers? Chinwe's voice was calm but firm. Or hold people accountable for their actions? Kingsley Thompson is from a good family, Victoria continued. He made some mistakes, yes, But to ruin his entire future over how he treated the cleaning staff seems excessive. The room fell silent again. A few employees who had been lingering to continue conversations with Chinwe turned to listen. Victoria, Adaise said, her voice taking on the steel edge that made her feared in boardrooms across Lagos. Are you seriously suggesting that harassment, fraud, and creating a hostile work environment are merely mistakes? I am suggesting that there is a proper way to handle these issues, and entrapment isn't it. Chinwe stepped forward. Victoria, in your 5 years as head of human resources, how many complaints have you received about Kingsley Thompson's behavior? Victoria shifted uncomfortably. Workplace dynamics are complex. Sometimes personalities clash. How many complaints? Chinwe repeated. Are teachers' authority cutting through the corporate BS? Several, but 17, Chinwe said firmly. I counted them. 17 formal complaints that you either dismissed, buried, or used to intimidate the complainants into silence. The remaining employees in the room were now fully attentive, sensing that another shoe was about to drop. And how many of these complaints were from what you consider good families? Adaise asked. Victoria's silence was answer enough. Chinwe continued. You see, Victoria, while I was invisible to people like Kingsley, I was also invisible to you. I heard you on the phone with his father, assuring him that any complications from staff complaints would be handled quietly. Victoria's face went pale. You were eavesdropping on private conversations. I was cleaning your office while you conducted business as if I wasn't there. Chinwe corrected. Just like you've been conducting HR business as if the workers you're supposed to protect don't matter. Francis, the security guard, spoke up from where he stood near the door. Ma, she also told my supervisor that I was getting too familiar with executives when I helped you carry cleaning supplies upstairs. Sarah nodded. She rejected my application for the marketing assistant position 3 times, even though I was qualified. She said I didn't have the right background for client facing roles. More voices joined in, employees sharing stories of how Victoria had blocked their advancement, dismissed their concerns, or made them feel unwelcome because of their background. This is serious, Victoria snapped. I've been protecting this company's reputation and maintaining professional standards. If that means being selective about who represents us to clients, then so be it. Professional standards, Adaise repeated coldly, like covering up fraud, like protecting harassers, like discriminating against qualified candidates because of their tribal origins or economic background. Victoria looked around the room and realized she had lost. The employees who once feared her were now looking at her with open contempt. Her allies had either left with Kingsley or were keeping strategically silent. I don't have to listen to this, she said, gathering her things. My resignation will be on your desk by tomorrow morning. Your resignation was accepted the moment you chose to protect Kingsley instead of the employee you were supposed to serve, Adaise replied. Security will escort you out. Your access is terminated immediately. As Victoria was led away, still protesting about proper procedures and unfair treatment, Chinwe turned to address the remaining employees. Let this be a lesson for all of us, she said gently. When we ignore injustice because it doesn't affect us personally, we become part of the problem. When we stay silent because we are afraid for our own positions, we enable the oppressors. Meanwhile, across the city, Kingsley Thompson sat in his father's office, trying to explain how his entire career had imploded in a single afternoon. Richard Thompson, a wealthy businessman who had built his empire through a combination of legitimate business and strategic connections, listened with growing horror as his son recounted the day's events. "You did what to a cleaning lady?" Richard asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "I didn't know she was important," Kingsley protested. "How was I supposed to know she was related to Adaeze Okoli?" "That's not the point," Richard exploded, rising from his chair. "The point is that you have been behaving like a spoiled child, bullying people who work for a living." "But, Dad, you always said that success means maintaining proper hierarchies." I said, "Success means understanding power dynamics and treating people with strategic respect. I never told you to humiliate hardworking people." Richard walked to his window, looking out at the Lagos skyline. His business empire, built over 30 years, was now in jeopardy because of his son's actions. "Do you understand what you have done?" he asked, without turning around. Okoli Industries was our biggest client. They represented 30% of our annual revenue, and you have just destroyed that relationship because you couldn't treat an elderly woman with basic human decency. Kingsley slumped in his chair. "Can't you fix it? Call in some favors. You know important people." "Son," Richard said, finally turning around, "there are some things money and connections cannot fix. And one of those things is a reputation for cruelty and disrespect." The phone on Richard's desk rang. It was his secretary. "Sir, I have Adaeze Okoli on line one." Richard's stomach dropped, but he picked up the phone. "Adaeze, I was hoping we could discuss." "Mr. Thompson." Adaize's voice was professional but cold. "I am calling to inform you that Okoli Industries will be terminating all contracts with Thompson Holdings, effective immediately." "Adaize, please, let's not let personal issues affect business relationships. Kingsley made a mistake, but surely we can." "Mr. Thompson, this isn't personal. It is business. We cannot partner with organizations that don't share our values regarding employee treatment and workplace respect. I understand you are upset, but Kingsley has been fired. He is no longer associated with our company operations." "The problem isn't just Kingsley," Adaize interrupted. "The problem is a culture that allowed Kingsley to behave this way for months without consequences. The problem is a business philosophy that sees people as disposable if they don't have the right pedigree." Richard felt his empire crumbling. "What would it take for you to reconsider?" There was a long pause. "Nothing, Mr. Thompson. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. I suggest you use this as an opportunity to evaluate the values you have passed on to your son." The line went dead. Kingsley looked at his father with desperate eyes. "Dad, what are we going to do?" Richard looked at his son, really looked at him, and for the first time saw not a successful young executive, but a spoiled, cruel young man who had learned all the wrong lessons about power and privilege. "We," Richard said slowly, "are going to learn from this. You are going to take time to understand what you have done wrong, and I am going to figure out how to rebuild a business reputation that took me 30 years to build and you destroyed in 3 months." 6 months later, The transformation of Pinnacle was remarkable. Chinwe's role as director of workplace culture had revolutionized the company environment. The anonymous reporting system had uncovered several other instances of harassment and discrimination, leading to policy changes and personnel adjustments throughout the organization. Sarah had been promoted to marketing coordinator and was thriving in a new role. Her high school education, combined with her natural intelligence and strong work ethic, made her one of the department's rising stars. Francis had been promoted to head of security, and his natural leadership and care for others had transformed the security department from mere guards to genuine employee advocates. Mr. Adenuga had been given additional responsibilities and a significant raise, recognition for the years he had spent protecting and advocating for his staff, despite pressure from above. The scholarship program Chinwe had produced was now funding education for 12 employees, creating pathways for advancements that had never existed before. On this particular Friday evening, Chinwe was finishing her rounds, not as a cleaner now, but as a leader, checking on her workplace family. She stopped by Sarah's desk. "How was your presentation today?" she asked. Sarah beamed. "It went wonderfully. Mr. Johnson said it was the best market analysis he had seen all years. And Mama Chinwe," she added, using the affectionate title that had stuck, "I got accepted to the university's weekend MBA program." Chinwe's face lit up with pride. "That is wonderful, my dear. See what happens when talent is given the opportunity to flourish." As she made her way to the elevator, Chinwe reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had taken the cleaning job not because she needed the money. Her daughter's success had long since secured her financial future, but because she had wanted to understand the workplace culture that her daughter was considering for major investments. What she had found was both worse and better than expected. Worse because the discrimination and harassment were more systematic than she had imagined. Better because underneath the toxic leadership, there were so many good people waiting for the chance to shine. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor, and Chinwe was surprised to see a familiar figure waiting in the lobby. Kingsley Thompson stood there, looking very different from the arrogant executive she remembered. Gone were the expensive suits and flashy accessories. He wore simple clothes and carried himself with what appeared to be genuine humility. "Mrs. Okoli," he said quietly, "I was hoping I could speak with you." Chinwe studied him for a moment. "What can I do for you, Kingsley?" "I wanted to apologize," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've spent the last 6 months thinking about what I did, how I treated you and others, and I am ashamed." "Go on," Chinwe said, neither encouraging nor discouraging him. "I grew up with everything handed to me, and I never learned to see people as people. I saw positions, status, usefulness to my own goals, but never people with their own struggles, dreams, and dignity." He paused, struggling with the words. "I lost my job. My father lost major contracts, and I've been working in my uncle's restaurant in Ibadan, washing dishes, cleaning floors, serving customers. For the first time in my life, I understand what it means to work with your hands, to depend on thieves, to have people look through you like you don't exist." Chinwe waited patiently. "I am not asking for forgiveness," Kingsley continued. "I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I did to you, and I am sorry." Chinwe looked at this young man who had once made her life miserable. had tried to destroy her dignity and livelihood. She saw someone who had been broken down and was trying to build himself back up as a better person. Kingsley, she said finally, do you know what the hardest part of those 3 months was for me? He shook his head. It wasn't the insults or the humiliation. It was watching a young man with so much potential waste his gifts on cruelty and arrogance. It was seeing someone who could have been great choose to be small instead. Kingsley's eyes filled with tears. But I also believe in redemption. Chinwe continued. I believe people can change if they truly want to. The question is, what are you going to do with this lesson you have learned? I don't know yet, Kingsley admitted, but I want to be better. I want to be someone who builds people up instead of tearing them down. Chinwe nodded. Then you're already on the right path. It won't be easy and it won't be quick, but change is possible if you are committed to it. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. There is a community center in Mushin where I volunteer on weekends. They need people to help with adult literacy programs and job training. If you are serious about changing, that would be a great place to start. Kingsley took the card with trembling hands. Thank you, he whispered. Don't thank me yet, Chinwe replied. Thank me when you have spent a year helping others without expecting anything in return. As Kingsley walked away, Chinwe felt a sense of completion. Justice had been served, positive changes had been implemented, and now even redemption was possible. 1 year later, the annual company award ceremony at Pinnacle Towers had become one of Lagos' most prestigious events, not because of the glamour, but because of what it represented. A workplace where merit mattered more than connections, where dignity was extended to all, and where second chances were possible for those who earned them. Chinwe sat at the head table, wearing an elegant gown, watching as Sarah accepted the Rising Star Award for her innovative marketing campaigns. In the audience, Francis beamed with pride as his wife, now recovered from her difficult pregnancy, applauded from their table. Adaise took the stage for the final award of the evening. This year's Lifetime Achievement Award goes to someone who taught us all a valuable lesson about seeing beyond appearances, about treating everyone with dignity, and about the power of quiet observation and moral courage. The audience rose in applause as Chinwe made her way to the stage. My mother, Adaise said, her voice thick with emotion. My mother reminded us that titles don't make leaders, character does, that education comes in many forms and wisdom often comes from those we least expect, that how we treat people when we think no one important is watching reveals everything about who we really are. Chinwe took the microphone, looking out at an audience that now included former adversaries who had learned to respect her, young people whose careers she had helped launch, and colleagues who had become family. My children, she began, and the warmth in those 2 words filled the room. Let me leave you with these thoughts. In life, we all have moments when we can choose to lift someone up or tear them down. We can choose to see the humanity in others or to see only what serves our purposes. She paused, thinking of Kingsley, who was now managing the literacy program at the community center and had recently written to thank her for the opportunity to serve. The measure of our character is not in how we climb, but in how many people we bring with us on the journey. The true mark of success is not what we accumulate, but what we contribute. The applause was thunderous, but Chinwe was thinking about something else entirely. Tomorrow was Monday, and there will be new challenges, new opportunities to model dignity and respect, new chances to see the potential in people that others might overlook. Because that is what leaders do. They see possibility where others see problems. They build bridges where others build walls, and they never forget that every person they meet is fighting a battle they know nothing about. And sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected teachers, like a CEO's mother who spent 3 months as a cleaning lady and changed an entire company culture in the process. Remember, you never know who is watching, and you never know whose mother you might be disrespecting. Treat everyone with dignity, because character is revealed not in how you treat your superiors, but in how you treat those who cannot do anything for you. Respect every person regardless of their job or social status. True character is revealed in how we treat those we consider beneath us. Humility and hard work are more valuable than privilege and connections. Second chances are possible for those who genuinely seek to change. A mother's love and wisdom can move mountains and change hearts. Thank you for watching Raw Tales Africa. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Remember, we all have the power to choose kindness over cruelty, respect over dismissal, and love over indifference. Until next time, keep treating people with the dignity they deserve.